Hello everyone and welcome back to DC Central, and in today's video I'm going to be doing my very late review of Batwoman Season 1, so let's discuss. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I am probably the last person on YouTube who's going to review Season 1 of Batwoman. I mean, it's been so long to the point where we are literally one day away from the premiere of Batwoman Season 2. So I thought, well, why? There's no better time. We have renewed interest in Batwoman, you know, people are going to be wanting to talk about the show again. And given the fact that I literally finished Batwoman Season 1 last night, I thought, hey, why not do a review now? And, you know, I've not done a video on this channel in a while, just because, obviously, I've been very busy recently with a new job and also with the holiday season. And of course, there hasn't really been much news in the Arrowverse. I know in like the last week, there has been quite a lot of news, and I'm sorry I haven't really been able to make any videos on that stuff, you know, such as the Green Arrow and the Canaries cancellation and stuff like that. You know, if you follow me on Twitter, you would have seen all my thoughts about it, but I haven't really had the chance to make many videos recently, so I thought, hey, why not come back with a big, bulky review like this, just in time for the premiere of Batwoman Season 2, where videos on this channel will be starting up again. So I apologise for being gone, but I hope you guys are looking forward to a whole load of new content coming from me as the DC TV Arrowverse season for 2021 kicks off tomorrow night with Batwoman Season 2. But enough about Season 2, let's go back and talk about Season 1. Now, I've been watching Season 1 over the last couple of weeks. I've been watching it on Blu-ray, and, you know, I did start watching Batwoman Season 1 as it was coming out, and I just kind of dropped off it. But I wanted to catch up, you know, for Season 2, so I can actually review the show for you guys and actually, you know, be a part of the Arrowverse again. Because, you know, if you don't watch one of the shows, you're kind of not experiencing the whole picture, so I kind of wanted to make sure I was all fully caught up with Batwoman before Season 2. And now I've finished Season 1, you know, overall, looking back on it, it's definitely an interesting season. It's definitely quite an interesting one, and a different style of show from what we've seen in the Arrowverse so far in a lot of ways. So let's dive into it. So I want to start off by talking about the season-long story arc for Season 1 of Batwoman. Of course, it focuses on Kane, played by Ruby Rose, the famous cousin of Bruce Wayne, and she returns to Gotham after a few years, and she is now taking up the mantle of Batman, but of course now being Batwoman, and she is looking to take on the crimes going on in Gotham, including the rise of the Wonderland Gang, led by her estranged sister, Beth, who is now known as Alice. This was a really compelling story for me, and I was genuinely shocked by how good the story was overall in this season. Especially by the time you get to the end of it, and you look at the journey you've been on overall, there's quite a lot of twists and turns in this season, and there's quite a lot of really interesting diversions in the storyline, and when it all comes together, it's actually really well done and really interesting. So the Kate versus Alice thing was really the sort of core of this story and the core of this season, and I'm going to talk about, you know, Ruby and Rachel individually when I talk about the characters in the show, but those two together, that connection between them, that dynamic between the two was really interesting because they're both really good in this show. Particularly Rachel Skarsten is fantastic, and seeing them play off of each other and see them, you know, these two idealistically different characters who are so close and have such a strong bond and such a strong connection because they are sisters, seeing them kind of come back together in this time where one is a hero, one is a villain, and one is literally insane to an incredible degree. It's just a fantastic thing to watch because these two just go at it, and you can see how, you know, Ruby is playing Kate as this very reserved but also very determined character, and then you have Rachel Skarsten playing Alice, or Beth, who is just completely off the wall and just doesn't care. And it's really interesting to watch that. And again, that core storyline, like, that is the real heart of the season, is between these two sisters. And I just loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And also, what surprised me about Batwoman Season 1, which I didn't expect, was the fallout from Crisis. Of course, Crisis did happen in the middle of the season. We had Ruby Rose in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And I didn't really expect much fallout from this, just because obviously it was the first season, and Ruby as Kate hasn't really been an established character yet, so she was first established really in this season, so I thought, well, we're not going to get much fallout. And while it certainly didn't have the same level of fallout as what we saw on, like, The Flash Season 6, they did a really good job of tying it in, because we actually had Rachel Skarsten being able to play a alternate version of Beth who gets sort of displaced on Earth 1 or Earth Prime. And that was really interesting because it actually allowed Kate to kind of have this battle back and forth between, you know, her real sister and this one who is her sister but isn't, and is it worth saving this new version of Beth or keeping the old one who is evil? Like, you know, there was a moral decision there. And I thought that was great stuff. I loved all of that. And again, it just helped Batwoman feel a bit more closely connected to the Arrowverse as a whole, because usually when you have a first season of a new Arrowverse show, it can feel pretty self-contained. Whereas I like the fact that Batwoman Season 1, you know, they chucked Kate straight into Crisis, they got her, you know, friends with Supergirl and stuff like that instantly, and then they actually gave her some fallout from Crisis, which I really, really enjoyed. And then also, the way the story goes on, and we actually have Kate's betrayal of Alice, you know, sort of in the back half of the season, was really good, because you feel like they're actually going to go in this direction where perhaps Kate is going to, you know, really sympathize with Alice and is really going to bring her, or try and bring her back to the good side or whatever. But I really like the fact that Kate, still after the death of Beth, kind of realizes that, yeah, you're past the point of no return. Like, we can't save you. And she betrays her and chucks her in Arkham. And I thought that was really great, because it then leads to this final story in the back half of the season, in the last few episodes, where we have Rachel Skarsten's Alice teaming up with the fantastic Mouse. Like, Mouse is also a fantastic addition. I haven't put him in my notes, but Mouse was also a fantastic character throughout the season. Loved him. But teaming up with him and Tommy Elliott, who becomes Hush by the end of the season. Perfect stuff. As you kind of see how they're planning to really destroy Kate's life. Because at this point, after the betrayal, Alice just wants her dead. And, you know, she really wants to ruin her life. And we see that by the very end of the season. You know, she promises Tommy Elliott a whole new face. And we see that he actually becomes Bruce Wayne. And obviously we're going to see how that plays out in Season 2. But the overall season-long storyline, even though it was cut short, because obviously because of COVID they weren't able to finish the whole season, it's still a really strong one. And I was, again, surprised looking back at the whole season. I was like, wow, that's actually a really good story. And the way it's gone and the way it's ended up, really good stuff. So let's talk about the characters on the show. Obviously, this is the first season, so it's kind of important to really establish our main cast of characters. And Ruby Rose as our lead, as Kate Kane and as Batwoman, I thought was really great. A bit like Stephen Amell in the first season of Arrow, she really improves as the season goes on and really grows into the character and really becomes her own version of the character by the end of the season. And obviously, it's really unfortunate that Ruby has now gone from the show. You know, I've made a whole video about Ruby's departure and how I think it was very sad and very upsetting. But, you know, for one season we got of her, I thought she was great. I really enjoyed her as Kate Kane. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with her in Season 2, you know, with the whole mystery surrounding her going missing. I want to see what that's all about. But I think she really grew into the character. You know, she really became convincing in the role. She really became, like, this strong, determined vigilante who was willing to do anything for Gotham. And I really bought into that. And I think that her dedication was really shown on screen. I loved her performance in the role, both as Kate Kane and as Batwoman. They were quite different, which I really liked. I actually quite enjoyed the differentiation between them. They actually did seem like she had to put on a different personality as Kate Kane in front of, you know, outside of characters like Luke and Mary. She actually had to put on a bit of a facade, which I really enjoyed. You know, is there very much that Bruce Wayne thing, which I quite enjoyed. So I thought Ruby was really strong and really impressive in the role. And again, a bit like Stephen Amell in the first season of Arrow, really grew in to become his own version or her own version of the character by the end of the season. And Rachel Skarsten, who plays both Alice and Beth throughout the season, was tremendous. Absolutely fantastic. Stole the season. Easily my favourite part of it. You know, it's really important with superhero stories, particularly in the first season, to have a really compelling, strong villain to really push the hero. And you honestly couldn't have gotten stronger than Alice. Like, she was really great, and I think she's honestly already one of the best and most iconic Arrowverse villains that we've had. She is incredibly compelling, very interesting, entertaining, and fantastically performed. I loved her. I thought she was amazing, you know, especially because we get a lot of flashbacks with Alice as well throughout the season, you know, really filling in the blanks of her backstory from when she went missing to how she came back to Gotham with Mouse, and all that I loved. Like, I completely bought into the fact that this character started as one thing and became another because she had to just change her life and become a different person in order to survive the hellish landscape she was placed in. And I loved all of that. And I think Rachel Skarsten completely sells it, because I think initially, I think the character of Alice, while she was good and she was strong and entertaining to watch, she was a bit caricature-y, and I think that she kind of came across as, like, you know, just someone who was obsessed with Alice in Wonderland and was just saying all these quotes and stuff like that. It kind of came across as a bit, you know, like I say, caricature-y. But as the season goes on and you find out more about her, she actually just becomes, she plays it more so as this incredibly broken girl, like this little girl who's still, like, trapped inside of this body, and this personality she had to create for herself because she didn't even know who she was anymore. And I think once they start playing it like that, you really get to see the sort of, traumatic side of the character, which I think just added so much more depth, and she just became an incredibly deep and emotional character, and a fantastic villain, like so believable. And it's always important for villains in a way, not all villains, but for a lot of villains, to really have a connection to the hero in some way, shape or form. So to make her, the estranged sister of Kate was, definitely a connection. That was certainly a big connection, and I loved that side of it too. I thought Rachel Scarston absolutely was the best part of this season, hands down. Very interested to see what they do with her in Season 2, given the fact that Kate Kane is no longer around. Hopefully they can do some interesting stuff, because I am a bit worried that her character might become a bit irrelevant after this season. But hopefully, they find a way to keep her there, keep her interesting, and keep her as sort of this maybe recurring threat throughout the entirety of Batwoman as a show. Kind of like the Reverse Flash in The Flash, or I think like Lex Luthor is in Supergirl. Kind of like that recurring threat who isn't necessarily always the main antagonist, but is always kind of a pain in the arse. I kind of want Alice to become that, and hopefully she doesn't become completely irrelevant come Season 2. And then we have Camrus Johnston as Luke Fox. I really like this character as well. This is the son of Lucius Fox, and I really enjoyed his character too. While he doesn't get too much to do in the season overall in terms of major storylines, we do have one that kind of kicks off towards the end. And I think Camrus is really good in the role, especially in the back half of the season. He really sells some of the emotional scenes. I would like to see a little bit more of him. In the comics, this character does become Batwing, so I'm interested to see if they actually go down that route, given the fact that this is the CW, and all the Arrowverse shows, pretty much the entire team will become superheroes by some point. I'm pretty sure we will see Batwing at some point, whether it's in Season 2, Season 3, whatever it may be. I think we will see it, but I would like to see Camrus Johnston actually get a bit more to do, because I think he's very talented, I think he's very good in the role, and just a very likable character overall. He is kind of the guy in the chair character, and I really liked his dynamic with Ruby, because he seems like someone who genuinely cared about Kate, and really, I bought that friendship, I bought that dynamic and that closeness between them that grew throughout the season. So again, interested to see what they do with him in Season 2 now that Kate's gone. So I think that Camrus Johnston, I thought he was really good, a real standout, and again, I really enjoyed his character. I just want to see a little bit more of him in Season 2, and a little bit more of a substantial, meaty storyline for him. Megan Tandy also is in this show playing Sophie Moore, and Sophie is an interesting one. I think that she isn't the best in this season, not the actress. I think Megan Tandy does a great job with the character, but the character itself of Sophie, I don't think is the best defined. And this is a problem that all the CW shows have, which is that in the first season particularly, a lot of the female characters, they are just sort of subjected to love interest roles and not really given much else. And that's kind of what Sophie is in this season. She's kind of just this love interest for Kate, and kind of has, obviously because they have that history, they have that past, they were in a relationship in the past, and they do some interesting stuff with Sophie in regards to her, sort of hiding who she is, hiding her identity in that way, hiding, her sexual orientation. And I like that stuff, especially towards the end of the season when they bring her mum into it. I like that. But I do feel like overall she was just kind of there to be this love interest and to kind of have this sort of tension between her and Kate. And, when you throw in her sort of relationship with Batwoman as well, and her relationship with Julia Pennyworth as well, I kind of feel like she was just kind of there to have relationship tension with Kate for the most part, which is fine, because again, I think a lot of characters like that, like James Olsen in Supergirl Season 1's like that. I think Laurel is like that, in Arrow Season 1. I think there are a lot of female characters in the CW Arrowverse that start off like that. So hopefully in Season 2 they actually do a bit more with her, and actually give her a bit more. A bit like Luke, I kind of want to see a bit more for Sophie, and actually give her own single storyline, where she's just kind of a storyline that's all about her. I would love to see that, because I think Megan Tandy's really good in the role. I just want to see her character get something a little bit more substantial, and actually allow her to move away from the love interest role that she was kind of stuck in this first season. And Nicole Kang as Mary Hamilton was a nice surprising character. Definitely didn't expect to like her character as much as I did, and I think that's very much the purpose of the writers. I think they very much, they set up this character. She begins as this socialite, this social media obsessed, sort of rich kid, and as time goes on, you start to find out she's actually not like that. That's pretty much her public face, and she's actually an incredibly talented doctor. I really liked her character, very, very likable. I liked her dynamic with a lot of the other characters, particularly, she kind of is a victim in all of this. She wants to really have a strong relationship with Kate. She wants to sort of have that sisterly bond with Kate, but initially Kate isn't very receptive of her. And also, you know, she loses her mum in this season, who, you know, her mother was obviously a pretty terrible character and, you know, pretty terrible person. But, you know, she does have that, and then that leads to bad blood between her and Rachel Scarston's character, which I thought was really great. And also her dynamic with Luke Fox was also really good. I enjoyed their relationship. They could potentially develop that more in Season 2. I could see them going down that route and actually pursuing the relationship side of that. I could see them going down that particular path with those two characters. But Nicole Kang, I thought she was really good, super likable, and again, a surprising character. I didn't expect her to sort of deliver the performance that she did and deliver that character in the way that she did. And the final character I want to talk about is Doug Ray Scott as Commander Kane. I'm not a huge fan of this character. I mean, simply because this character, it's just a trope that we've seen so many times before. Even in the Arrowverse, you know, particularly on Arrow, we got this so much of this sort of authoritarian kind of police character, kind of like Quentin in Arrow, who is just out to hunt the vigilante in the city. You know, it doesn't really matter what they do, if they do anything good, if they do anything bad, they're just always bad. Vigilantes are bad across the board, and we have to stop them. And, you know, it's not a bad storyline or anything like that. It's just one we've seen so many times before, and it gets a bit tiring, especially, you know, Arrow did it so many times in its own show. I kind of want them to move past this, especially because by the end of the season, it seems like, you know, the crows that he operates are kind of on an all-out war against Kate or against Batwoman, which I'm not particularly about. I kind of hope this is something they can move past, and, you know, but then once they do move past it, I'm kind of like, well, what's the point of Jacob Kane as a character? Like, what's he actually going to do? They could move him into a Quentin-style role and actually make him a bit more of an ally to the team or an asset to the team, and maybe moving down the political route. I don't know, but I think that this character, you know, he just serves a purpose, just to kind of, even though he is Kate's father, you know, he kind of is there to serve this purpose as being this authoritarian police character who, again, it's just a trope we've seen so many times before. I did enjoy the dynamic between him and Beth, though, and him and Alice, just because that was interesting to see him just not accept the fact that, you know, she was still alive, and once he actually did realize this was his daughter, you know, him having to try and make peace with that or not make peace with that. He didn't know what the right thing to do was. I thought that was interesting. But beyond that, he was just kind of the typical police, you know, vigilante hunter character that we've seen so many times before. So I found him a bit tiring throughout the season, so he wasn't exactly my favorite character or anything. And there are a few other characters who I'd like to shout out as well. Like I said, obviously, I really liked Mouse. I thought he was great. I really enjoyed Tommy Elliott too, especially when he becomes Hush at the end. He kind of becomes very insane. I really enjoyed that side of that character as well. And also Julia Pennyworth was nice too. I liked her too. I thought she was pretty cool. But the characters overall, I think this has a really strong ensemble cast. Again, I think they're all very likable, very strong actors. And even though I think a couple of the characters, like I said, like Jacob and I think Sophie, could do with a bit more and actually kind of move outside of the box that they've been put in, I think there's potential to do that, and those characters are sticking around, so I'm excited to see what they do with them. It's just that I feel like overall this is a really strong cast, and I'm excited to see this cast develop more with the introduction of Javicia Leslie. Now, because this is a grounded and more realistic superhero show within the Arrowverse, we do have a lot of a focus on action. This definitely doesn't have as much action as I thought it was going to, given the fact that this was kind of following on from Arrow and obviously sort of being almost like a, you know, I know it's Batwoman, but obviously it's like a Batman-esque show. I was kind of expecting a bit more action than there actually is, but the action when it's there is really strong and it's fun. It's, you know, it's brutal, it's quick, it's, you know, it's what you'd expect from this type of thing. But it's definitely not as action-heavy as Arrow was, which is what I was kind of expecting. There's definitely a lot more character drama, and I think that comes from the fact that there is no real mystery in this season. And what I mean by that is that normally in these superhero shows, particularly in the Arrowverse, there's normally a mystery with the main villain, where, you know, the villain and the hero, they don't know who each other are. But what I liked about this is that there's none of that, really. It's pretty much from episode 1, the hero and the villain, they know who each other are, and it just allows for that dynamic to continue. In the same reason why I love, you know, Prometheus and Adrian Chase in Arrow Season 5 was that reveal happened at the perfect time, so it allowed Stephen Amell and Josh Segarra to have that perfect dynamic for the back half of the season. Batwoman Season 1 has that same success because they have it at the very beginning, and that just runs throughout the entire season, and it's the backbone of the show. So that really works for me. So even though there isn't as much action as I would have thought, it is replaced with really great drama because of how well they handle the mystery or lack thereof. Also, it's very important to talk about Gotham in this as well. Like, obviously, this is our Arrowverse interpretation of Gotham, and it does feel a bit, I guess, a bit like Star City, but I do feel like they do distinguish it a little bit. Like, this does feel much dirtier than Star City ever did. Star City was always pretty dark and pretty rainy, but this feels like a dirty city. Like, it feels pretty grimy, it feels pretty grim, and I think that's a good way to separate it. And it is also filmed in Chicago. Like, when you look at all of the, outside shots and all the aerial shots, it's all Chicago, which makes it feel like the Dark Knight trilogy. Obviously, that was where they filmed the Dark Knight trilogy, so that kind of gives it that look and feel. So I liked Gotham overall. It definitely gave it its own personality and definitely separates it from the other major cities in the Arrowverse, like I say, like Star City, Central City, National City. It does separate it in that way, so I did enjoy it as a sort of character within the show. I will say, though, that this season does take a little while to get into the groove. I think the first half of the season is very front-loaded in regards to the Kate and Alice stuff, even though I do think that is the backbone of the show, as I said, and I do think that side of it is really strong. It does kind of get burnt out in the first half of the season, sort of in the run-up to Crisis, because it's all that, and there's not really much else going on. So it's kind of a bit front-loaded, and then we have Crisis as a nice little break, and then after that they start to introduce some more storylines, kind of flesh out the season a little bit more, which I really liked, because kind of like the Flash Season 5 with the cicada thing, if that's the only thing you've got going on in a 20-plus episode season, it's just going to get boring quick, and I think that the season almost suffered from that. Again, if it went any longer, I think it would have suffered, but luckily, I think Crisis came in at the perfect time, and then after that, it allowed them to flesh out the story with some more detail and actually allow them to breathe a little bit more, so it didn't become stale, which I thought was really smart, because again, it nearly hit that point that Flash Season 5 did, which I was kind of worried about. So it does take a while to get into its groove, but like I say, once you get past the crossover and past episode 9, I think the season really picks up. And the final thing I want to talk about is Ruby's exit. Obviously, I have made a video on this, so I'm not going to spend too long talking about it, but I mainly want to talk about it in regards to the end of this season and how it's going to play into Season 2. Like, we know that Kate goes missing, and that's kind of why she's not in Season 2, and why Javicia Leslie's Ryan Wilder is able to pick up the suit and kind of become Batwoman and take on the mantle. I do think it's interesting, especially because, as I said at the time, like, most of the characters in this show are incredibly close and are either family or close enough to Kate. Like, obviously, Alice is her sister, so is Mary, she's her half-sister, Jacob's her father, Sophie is her ex-girlfriend. Like, they're all very, very close to Kate, and they're all very much Kate-centric characters, like, except for Luke, who isn't family to Kate in any way, really. Most of them are, so it's kind of interesting that they have taken that character out of the show. But I also think it does create a very interesting dynamic to bring in a new character like Ryan Wilder, because it's going to create some interesting dynamics, because they're going to be like, oh, well, who is this person? Why is she getting it? Especially for the people who knew Kate was Batwoman, they're going to be interested to see how she's going to take up the mantle. And the people who don't are going to be like, well, where's the original Batwoman? And I think that's interesting. So, I do think Ruby's exit, it's definitely weird, and I think it is going to make the show feel very fresh and new, because it's going to feel kind of reboot-esque. But I do feel like there's going to be some interesting fallout. I'm just interested to see what they do with the storylines too, like the Hush Bruce Wayne thing. Like, what are they going to do with that? Obviously, that was designed to kind of really tear Kate apart from the inside, and obviously, if she's not there, if we have Ryan now, who has literally no connection to Bruce Wayne, what are they really going to do with Bruce Wayne? Like, I'll be interested to see if they actually drop that storyline pretty early on with the Tommy Elliott stuff, because, again, if you don't have Kate there, what's really the point of doing this Bruce Wayne thing? Because it's purely there to mess with Kate, so if she's not there, it kind of feels a bit superfluous. But the other stuff, I think they could pretty much continue on with, and like I say, with the other characters, I just really hope they do bring in some new, fresh storylines, particularly for Luke and Sophie, and also Jacob. We actually get some new stuff. I mean, Jacob should have some pretty interesting stuff to say about the new Batwoman, to be fair, so I'm interested to see what they do with him. Like I say, with Sophie, I think they need to actually give her her own storyline, and same with Luke as well. But I think overall, like, I think Ruby's exit, it could be a really negative thing for the show, or it could be really positive. It just depends how they handle it, and we'll see that come the premiere of Season 2 tomorrow night. So overall, I think Batwoman Season 1 was a really strong start to the show. Again, I don't think this season's perfect. I do think it has a lot of problems when it comes to finding its footing and also getting into its groove a little bit. But that is what you tend to find with a lot of Season 1 shows. Even when you look at the Arrowverse, I think Legends Season 1 took a while to get going and find its feet. Same with Supergirl as well. You could argue Supergirl never really found its feet, but I think that, you know, with Batwoman, it did take a while to get into its groove, but once it did, it really kicked off, and I really enjoyed it. And I think it's a great show. It definitely feels like it filled a gap in the Arrowverse, and, you know, now that Arrow's gone, it felt like we needed a grounded superhero show. I guess we have Black Lightning as well, but obviously this is very much in the style of Arrow more so than Black Lightning. So I really like Batwoman Season 1. I think it did a great job of establishing this world, these characters, and Kate as Batwoman. Obviously it didn't last very long, and, you know, it does feel a bit unfortunate that we had all the stuff in Crisis with Kate being the paragon of courage and whatnot. All that very much feels pointless now, but, you know, obviously that was unplanned, so you can't really criticize them for that, but I think overall it does a really good job of establishing itself within the Arrowverse and creating a really strong show and a strong foundation for this show going forward. Like I say, it's not perfect. I do feel like there are a couple of problems with it. You know, it does take a little bit while to get going. It also nearly suffers from focusing on one thing for too long and burning itself out. And like I say, I think a couple of the characters are a bit one note in this season, in the sense that they don't really have much going on outside of, you know, one thing, which isn't really their own thing. So I do feel like it's not perfect, but overall it's a strong season. So with that said, I'm going to give Batwoman Season 1 a 7 out of 10. I think it's a really compelling story and really strong, great cast of characters, and I can see it only improving from here on out. But what do you guys think about Season 1 of Batwoman? Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Did you enjoy this season, or were you not really a fan of it? And are you looking forward to Season 2? Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, guys, if you want to see more DC TV content like this, I know I've been gone for a while, but like I say, I am back now with the launch of the new season of the Arrowverse. So make sure you stick around, hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, because I will be around on Monday with my review for Batwoman Season 2, Episode 1. So make sure you stick around for that. And as always, guys, I hope to see you in my next video, which, like I say, will be on Monday, so hopefully I'll see you there.